France, the birthplace of these things, and these people. But before we get to all of that, 1919 through 1939. World War I ends with the Treaty of Versailles, and Prime Minister Georges Clemenceau, this beautiful man, was very angry with Germany, wanting them to pay reparations for the whole entire war. You get the idea. And while all this lovely fighting was going on, France lost its territory to Germany, and George was like, nah, and added the return of territories to the treaty. Everyone signed it, and world peace was achieved. Kinda. Government. George is still in office, barely. The French administration is still slightly salty since they figured they would be invited to peace negotiations and whatnot, but they weren't, and excluded them from the conduct of war. Oh, the price of the franc dropped by 50%. Now back on track. The presidential election came around and George thought he would win, but he didn't, so he quit the premiership. But he was forced to quit, so actually he was just fired. George was ultimately replaced by the Bloc National, a coalition of rightist forces who agreed with Germany paying for everything. Raymond Poincaré enters the premiership, yet another beautiful man, and the French Chamber of Deputies demands payment. Germany asked to postpone payments and didn't pay them. Poincaré was not pleased, so he sent 40,000 brigades with blades to the war in Germany. France lost lots of money, Germany still didn't pay, and the Dawes plans came in saying Germany don't have to pay as much every year. Theoretically, Poincaré vanishes into thin air. Meanwhile, the Bloc National got replaced with the Cartel de Gauche, a moderate socialistic coalition led by Edouard Herriot, who were unorganized and unfit for government. France accepted the Dawes plan and evacuated from the war. Since they could not agree on what to do with Germany or anything about the economy, Poincaré poofed back into existence as prime minister and was given many powers. Poincaré said this franc be worthless as he devalued it. Poincaré decided that he liked being in thin air and resigned. France was thrown into chaos. Barricades were everywhere, riots in the streets, everyone was in turmoil. France was a hot mess. Elections rolled around again and Leon Blum became prime minister. Though he was popular with the working peeps, this fueled his enemies' strength and increased the debt, leading to the government crumbling like a cookie. The rightist government restored order to the economy and increased their arms in preparation for World War II, which France started by declaring war on Germany.
After the horrific occurrence of World War I, France was fighting back with depression, government leaders, and the influence of culture. Culture was extraordinary and occurred all throughout France. Parisian nightlife was greatly influenced by American culture. One of its greatest influences was the ragtime called jazz, which became popular in Paris. France called their Roaring Twenties Les Années Folles. The first golden age occurred for French cinema in the 1930s. Many people in art and literature believed that life and death were all perceived as contradictions, as though this also could be called surrealism. Surrealism became an international intellectual and political movement. In 1925, Coco Chanel was an outstanding French fashion designer of the fashion empire, and she influenced women to become independent. The economy, on the other hand, was doing well for some time, but trying to recover from the Depression. In the 1920s, the Frenchmen used most of their energy recovering from war by working in the industries. The working population increased between 1919 and 1929. There were 14,600 in 1919 and 20,000 working in 1929. The government introduced 40-hour work weeks, 12% wage increase, armaments, and factories nationalized, 2-week paid vacations per year. As of the Depression, the population increased with 4 million immigrants. During the Depression, millions were unemployed. Many couples viewed raising children as a hardship rather than joy. But by 1935, industrial production had fallen to 79% of the 1928 level and exports to 55%. Registered unemployment hovered at less than 500,000, but this figure concealed the fact that many urban workers were subsisting on family farms owned by relatives. Besides, the French exported much of their unemployment. That thousands of workers lost their work permits and had to return home. The Depression did not end in France when World War II occurred. The farm population was drawing steadily. Farming engaged 35% of the French working population during the Depression. When women had a place in culture and politics, low birth rate occurred and heavy industry emerged during and after World War I.
In the French government, the prime minister is the head of the government, is the person with the highest political power, and is the person who makes all final decisions for the French people. but they are picked by the president and can be fired for not upholding the political beliefs of the president. The French president is just the head of the state for the country. The greatest power they have is to appoint the prime minister. Raymond Pinker was president of France from 1913 to 1920. Pinker ran for office of president despite the opposition of the left under George Clements, a lifelong enemy. He won the election on January 17, 1913. Although the presidency was a position with little real power, he hoped to infuse new vitality into it and make it the best of Union's sacre of rights, left, and the center. Throughout World War I, he strove to preserve national unity, even confiding to the government to Clemens, the man best qualified to lead the country to victory. George Clement, after 3 years of World War I, when the French morals and resources were at their lowest ever, he accepted President Raymond Pinker's invitation to head the war government as prime minister. His steadfast and ruthless pursuit of war brought him the title of Father of Victory. Edward Heriot led the opposition of the post-war right-wing election coalition, the Bloc Nation, where the Cartel des Guiches, a left-wing coalition of radicals and socialists, was formed to fight the parliamentary election of May 1924. It was led by Heriot, and its election triumph enabled him to form his first ministry in June 1924. He also took the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He forced the resignation of Alexander Millerand, president of the Republic, who had openly electored on behalf of the right-wing parties. He extended de jure recognition of the Soviet Union, which he had visited 2 years before. Under Heriot's leadership, France accepted the Dawes Plan and agreed to advocate for the Ruhr troops that former President Raymond Poincaré had sent and to force payments of reparation by Germany. In April 1925, Heriot's ministry fell because of financial policies. In July 1926, his second ministry lasted only 3 days. He joined cabinet of Raymond Pinker as Minister of Education. It was June 1932 before Heriot came back to power as Premier and Foreign Minister. His ministry fell 6 months later when the Chambers of Deputies refused to pay the December installment of French war debts to the United States.